Last night, President Biden gave a press conference to mark the ending of this NATO conference. The press conference ostensibly was to mark the end of the NATO conference. Everyone knows that it was really sort of like an opportunity for Biden to attempt to change the narrative that it's been around for a while, but that got cemented during the debate, which is he is simply does not have the physical or perhaps mental ability to both campaign and be president.
Or serve a second term for that matter.
I mean, I think, for people who are asking for him to step down, to be replaced by Harris, the idea that he would step down after he was president would be perfectly fine as well. The issue is, can he win this campaign against Donald Trump? And so this is there's two orders to this problem. One is what he does any given moment. And two is it enough to be perceived as enough to convince voters? Because you could look at his performance last night and say, I mean, it wasn't great, but you don't need to necessarily, if you look at this in a vacuum, it wasn't great, but do you need to pull the fire alarm?
Right.
But the problem is it's not in a vacuum. What else is in that space is what he did on the debate stage, his age, the changes people notice with him, and the fact that the press is going to constantly ask him about every single gaffe, every single moment. And the entire campaign is going to be focused on him as opposed to being a Trump referendum. Here is the last question. We're not going to play the gaffes that he made. I think those are sort of like,
he called Zelensky Putin, introduced him as Putin. He, in the answer to the first question,
right after that,
he did. But then in the answer to the first question, he called Kamala Harris Vice President Trump. Yeah, I mean,
because the question was, could she be Trump? I mean, like, honestly, if we were held to that standard, again, in a vacuum, wouldn't have a show anymore.
Yeah, right.
But here is the end of the question, because this is interesting for two things. One indicates that this story is simply not going to go away. We cannot control the entire world press from these desks that we sit at. And
it's right for them to ask. I'm sorry. Like, this is legitimate. He hasn't apparently been at a full cabinet meeting since October 2nd. That was before the Hamas attack. This is not tenable.
Legitimate, illegitimate. These questions are going to be asked. That's the function of our press. That's the way things work. It's like arguing against gravity.
Yeah.
But this also, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I think there's a little bit of wiggle room in his answer here.
You earlier explained confidence in your vice president.
Yes.
If your team came back and showed you data that she would fare better against former President Donald Trump, would you reconsider your decision to stay in the race?
No, unless they came back and said, there's no way you can win. Me. No one's saying that. No poll says that.
Mr. President,
okay.
This ends tonight's press conference.
Okay. So the question for him is not whether Harris has a better chance than him, and that's fine, I guess. The question is whether he has an opportunity. And I'm holding in my hand NBC reporting that came out like hours before this, saying that there are insiders in the campaign who are now saying there's no path for him to have a victory.
Right.
Now, recall, he did not say that God Almighty had to come down and tell him this. He has now opened the door to maybe his campaign advisor saying this. And as astute as Hunter may be, Hunter does not have the polling that the people on the campaign do. So this is, and whether he's conscious of it or not, this is an opening for him to come back and say, my advisors have said there is no path for me to victory. And I said that if there was no path for me to victory, then I would step down as your candidate. And I could do, now maybe I'm wish casting here, but it's definitely different than I said before. You're
not
God
wish-casting.
Almighty tells me,
Sam, you're not wish casting. I mean, we're at this point where the momentum just keeps ramping up. There was a very, vague statement put out by Hakeem Jeffries about their meeting where he said he came to him with the caucus's, quote, conclusions. Reporting this morning out of the New York Times by Ken Vogel, who's on the beat about donations, said that Biden's largest super PAC, Future Forward, roughly $90 million in pledged donations, is now frozen, according to these donors, if he remains at the top of the ticket, and that includes multiple 8-figure commitments. And then just from a pure and also Jim Hines last night came out and said nothing that the press conference did would have changed my mind. I think he should step down.
All right, we'll play that clip later. Yep.
We'll play that clip later. But just from a political perspective, I know I was really surprised to see people say that press conference went okay. I watched the whole thing and I found it hard to follow for the most part, and also unsettling when he kept doing that whisper thing. It's hard to wait. Why? Come on. And he kept, anyway.
Why do you say that? It's Joe Biden and the Yin Yang twins.
Anyway. Yeah, someone said he sounded like the Yin Yang twins. From a pure political perspective, it's not great politics when everyone looks at your candidate and feels sad.
Yeah.
He's a bummer. He's anxiety-inducing to watch. People don't, even if they like him, and we see a majority of Biden supporters now think he should step aside, according to ABC polling from yesterday. Over 60% of Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents think he should step aside. So, the problem is just that you need to inspire, and he makes people want to crawl into a hole and not think about him because it makes them upset, even if they're prone to liking him.
Also, I'll just say best chance to beat Trump should be the requirement, not I have to guarantee lose before I make a shift here, but whatever.
Hey folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.